I am Kent, 32 years old, and I just watched my parents steal $570,000 I had spent a decade saving. They thought they were finally getting the ultimate payday to fund my brother Ryan, their eternal favorite. My whole life, I was the afterthought, while Ryan got everything handed to him. But what my parents never realized was that after years of their emotional manipulation, I had finally set an elaborate trap to expose who they truly were, and they walked right into it, proving everything I had always suspected about our family. If you are enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you are watching from. When family and money mix, things can get ugly fast. Growing up in suburban Portland in a middle-class neighborhood, I learned early that family love could be conditional. Our house was nice enough. 4 bedrooms with a small backyard where my father Thomas would occasionally grill on weekends, while my mother Diane tended to her flower garden. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. But inside those walls, a clear hierarchy existed, and I quickly discovered my place in it. Ryan came along when I was 4 years old. I still remember the day my parents brought him home from the hospital. My mother cradled him like he was made of precious crystal, while my father beamed with pride. "Look, Kent, this is your little brother. You have to protect him," my father said. Little did I know that those words would evolve into a lifetime of sacrifice that was expected only from me, never reciprocated. The favoritism started subtly. When relatives visited, Ryan was always passed around first, cooed over, while I stood quietly in the corner. As we grew older, the differences became impossible to ignore. Each August before school started, we would go shopping for clothes. I received the bare minimum from discount stores, while Ryan got name-brand everything. "Ryan needs confidence to make friends," my mother would explain when I questioned the disparity. "You are already so self-sufficient, Kent." That was their perpetual justification. I was mature for my age, or independent or responsible, which somehow translated to needs less love and attention. Meanwhile, Ryan was sensitive and needs extra encouragement and just takes more time to find his way. The academic double standard was particularly painful. I remember bringing home my report card in 6th grade with straight A+ grades and placing it proudly on the refrigerator. My father glanced at it and simply nodded. "Expected from you," he said flatly. 2 weeks later, Ryan brought home a report card filled with B- grades and 1 A-. My parents took us all out for ice cream to celebrate his breakthrough. I sat silently eating my vanilla cone, while everyone praised Ryan for his mediocre achievement. By 15, I was informed I needed to get a job. "You need to learn the value of hard work," my father lectured. I spent weekends and summers bagging groceries, then working at the local hardware store, saving every penny I could. Meanwhile, Ryan never held a job throughout high school or college. When I asked why the different standards, my mother simply said, "Ryan is focusing on his social development. He will have plenty of time to work later." The pattern continued with extracurricular activities. Ryan played baseball, and my parents never missed a game. They cheered from the bleachers, took videos, and plastered the refrigerator with photos of his modest achievements. Meanwhile, I joined the debate team in Academic Bowl. I won regional competitions and qualified for state-level tournaments. My parents attended exactly 0 events. "We trust you will do well without us there," my mother would say. Ryan needs the encouragement. Perhaps the first major betrayal I can clearly remember happened when I was 12. I had saved $300 from birthday, money, and small jobs around the neighborhood, keeping it in a locked box under my bed. I was saving for a new computer that would help with my schoolwork. One day, the money simply vanished. When I confronted my parents, they seemed uncomfortable but admitted they had borrowed it to buy Ryan the latest gaming system. "He was feeling down after not making the baseball team," my mother explained. "We will pay you back soon." They never did. By the time college applications came around, I had already accepted that I would be financing my own education. I applied for every scholarship possible, worked through high school to save, and still had to take out loans. Ryan, predictably, had his entire education funded by my parents. "We want him to focus on the college experience without worrying about money," my father explained. The fact that I had to work night shifts at a convenience store while maintaining deanless status was apparently not a concern. These experiences shaped me in ways my parents never intended. I developed an almost pathological self-reliance. I learned that I could depend on no one but myself. I became obsessed with financial security because I knew no safety net existed for me. Every dollar I earned was meticulously tracked. Every purchase was carefully considered. While other teenagers spent frivolously, I created spreadsheets and budgets. My father frequently criticized my career aspirations. "Why do you want to go into software development? You are not really a people person," he would say. Despite the fact that I had many close friends and was well liked by teachers and employers alike. Meanwhile, Ryan would announce a new career path every few months, from sports medicine to restaurant management to real estate, and my father would enthusiastically support each fleeting interest. "Ryan has such diverse talents," he would beam. The constant inequality created a strange dynamic between Ryan and me. I never blamed him directly. He was, after all, just accepting what was offered to him. What child would refuse preferential treatment? But a distance grew between us that neither of us tried to bridge. We existed in separate orbits within the same household, each playing our assigned roles. He was the golden child. I was the reliable afterthought. By high school graduation, I had already developed the financial habits that would eventually lead to my success. While friends blew their gift money on parties or clothes, I opened a savings account. I researched basic investments. I took free online courses about personal finance. I knew that my future security depended entirely on my own actions. "Kent is just so serious about money," my mother would tell relatives, as if my responsibility was some kind of character flaw. But being serious about money was not a choice for me. It was survival. College was a pivotal time in my life, though not for the typical reasons of self-discovery or wild parties. While other students were enjoying the freedom of campus life, I was working night shifts at a 24-hour diner, coming home at 2 a.m. to study until dawn. Despite this grueling schedule, I maintained my position on the dean list every semester. The library became my sanctuary, a quiet place where I could focus without distraction and where my achievements were based solely on merit, not family politics. During my junior year, I met Professor Lawrence in my advanced computer science course. Unlike my father, he immediately recognized my potential. "You have a unique analytical mind, Kent," he told me, after I aced his notoriously difficult midterm exam. "But you also understand the human element of technology, which is rare." This simple acknowledgement of my abilities nearly brought me to tears, though I managed to maintain my composure. Professor Lawrence became the mentor I had always craved. He recommended me for competitive internships, wrote glowing recommendation letters, and occasionally invited me to dinner with his family, showing me what healthy family dynamics looked like. Through his guidance, I secured an internship at a growing software company during my senior year. Upon graduation, despite my father suggesting I might not be cut out for corporate culture, I landed a full-time position at that same company. My starting salary was modest, but it represented something profound to me: financial independence. I finally had distance from my family and control over my own life. My career advancement came rapidly. While colleagues spent weekends partying or took extended vacations, I volunteered for additional projects, mastered new programming languages on my own time, and developed solutions to problems before management even recognized their existence. Within 18 months, I received my first promotion. By year 3, I was leading a small team. Meanwhile, I began educating myself about investing. I spent evenings researching market trends, reading investment books, and studying successful portfolios. I started small, putting a few $100s into index funds, then gradually diversifying into carefully researched stocks and bonds. I lived well below my means, maintaining the same modest apartment even as my salary increased. As my financial knowledge grew, I also developed a side project, a series of financial planning applications. What began as personal tools to optimize my own investments gradually evolved into products with market potential. I launched them with minimal fanfare, charging modest subscription fees. To my surprise, they gained a dedicated following, creating a steady stream of passive income that I reinvested immediately. Throughout this period, Ryan continued his pattern of inconsistency. He graduated college with a degree in communications after 5.5 years, then cycled through jobs at an alarming rate. He would start positions with enthusiasm, then quit within months, always with a different excuse. The management did not appreciate my creativity, or the company culture was toxic, or I need something that offers more growth potential. After each career setback, our parents provided a safety net. They paid his rent when he was between jobs. They bought him a new car when he complained about his commute. When he wanted to move to a trendier neighborhood, they covered the security deposit and first month's rent on a luxury condo that I could never have afforded at his age. The contrast between our living situations was stark. I lived in a functional one-bedroom apartment, furnished with second-hand items chosen for durability rather than style. Ryan lived in a 2-bedroom condo with floor-to-ceiling windows, designer furniture, and the latest electronics. Yet whenever I visited my parents, they would ask with concern if I was doing okay financially, while never questioning Ryan's lifestyle that clearly exceeded his earning capacity. The financial discrepancy extended to every aspect of life. Ryan wore designer clothes, ate at expensive restaurants, and took lavish vacations, posting everything on social media with the hashtag living my best life. I later discovered that my parents had refinanced their home twice to cover what they called Ryan temporary setbacks. Once, during a family dinner, I gently tried to offer Ryan some financial advice after he complained about credit card debt. My father immediately shut me down. "Not everyone needs to pinch pennies like you do, Kent," he said dismissively. "Ryan is building connections and experiences. Money is not everything." My mother nodded in agreement, adding, "Different approaches work for different people." The irony that they were financing Ryan's approach seemed lost on them. I learned to maintain emotional distance while appearing supportive during family gatherings. I would listen to Ryan's latest career ideas or my parents' financial complaints without comment. I stopped offering advice or sharing details about my own growing success. It was easier that way, creating a protective barrier between my actual life and the role I played in family dynamics. A particularly revealing conversation happened with my mother when I was 28. During a rare moment alone in the kitchen during Thanksgiving, she sighed while looking at Ryan chatting animatedly with relatives in the living room. "I worry about him so much," she confessed. "He just needs more help in life than you do, Kent. You have always been able to take care of yourself." Her words crystallized everything for me. In her mind, my self-sufficiency was not an achievement to be proud of, but rather a convenient trait that allowed them to focus their resources and attention elsewhere. My independence had not earned their respect. It had simply made me easier to ignore. That conversation marked a turning point. I decided to build my wealth quietly, without my family knowledge. I stopped sharing even vague details about my work. When asked about my finances, I would give non-committal answers. "I am getting by," or "The industry has its ups and downs." Meanwhile, I accelerated my savings and investments, setting ambitious but achievable financial goals. By my 32nd birthday, through disciplined investing, strategic career moves, and my increasingly profitable side applications, I had accumulated $570,000 in liquid assets. This represented financial security that neither of my parents, now nearing retirement with limited savings, could imagine. The knowledge of this nest egg gave me a quiet confidence during family gatherings, where I was still treated as the less successful child. What my family did not know was that this financial security would soon become the instrument through which years of family dynamics would finally be exposed. The catalyst came during a Sunday family dinner at my parents' house. These monthly gatherings had become a ritual I endured rather than enjoyed. I would listen to Ryan's latest schemes and my parents' thinly veiled criticisms of my life choices, then return to my apartment feeling drained but grateful for the physical and emotional distance I had created. This particular dinner began like any other. My mother had prepared her signature pot roast. My father discussed his golf game. Ryan showed off his new designer watch, clearly beyond the budget of someone between jobs. Then, as we moved to the living room for coffee, the atmosphere shifted. "We need to discuss something serious," my father announced, his voice uncharacteristically somber. My mother clutched her tissue box. Already teary-eyed, Ryan stared at the floor, his usual confidence replaced by what appeared to be genuine fear. "Ryan is in trouble," my father continued. "Serious trouble." What unfolded over the next hour was a story that would have seemed implausible had I not witnessed a lifetime of Ryan poor decisions. Apparently, he had developed a gambling problem over the past year. What started as social poker games had escalated to online betting, and eventually high-stakes games with connected individuals. He now owed $540,000 to people who, according to my father, do not use traditional collection methods. Ryan finally spoke up, his voice cracking. I thought I could win it back. I kept thinking the next game would turn things around. Tears streamed down his face as he described threatening phone calls and a recent encounter where two men had followed him home from work. They said they know where Mom and Dad live too. My mother reached for his hand. "We are so scared for him, Kent. These are dangerous people." I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Concern for my brother's safety, certainly, but also a familiar sense of responsibility being placed on my shoulders. The expectation in the room was palpable. "I can help connect Ryan with addiction counseling," I offered carefully, "and perhaps I could contribute some money toward a structured repayment plan after he gets professional financial advice." My father shook his head impatiently. "This is not the time for lectures about financial responsibility. These people want their money now. All of it." "How exactly do you plan to get that kind of money?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. My mother looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "We know you have been successful. You never talk about it, but we can tell. You have always been so good with money." There it was. After years of dismissing my financial discipline as excessive and unnecessary, they were now viewing it as a resource to exploit. The irony was not lost on me. "I have some savings," I acknowledged cautiously. "But not that kind of liquid cash readily available." "Kent, this is your brother, your family," my father said, his tone shifting from worried to indignant. "Whatever you have squirreled away can be replaced. Ryan, life cannot." I took a deep breath. "I am willing to help, but not blindly. Ryan needs addiction counseling first. Then we can discuss a reasonable amount I could contribute as part of a comprehensive solution." The conversation quickly deteriorated. My offer of partial assistance and structured support was rejected as insufficient and heartless. My father accused me of being selfish and vindictive. "After everything we have done for you," he shouted, a statement so disconnected from reality that I nearly laughed. I left their house that night with tensions at an all-time high. My refusal to immediately transfer over $500,000 branded as family betrayal. The drive home was a blur of anger and hurt, decades of accumulated resentment threatening to boil over. 2 days later, while at work, I received an unusual notification on my phone. My banking app was alerting me to a login from an unrecognized device. Before I could process this information, additional alerts began flooding in. Transfers were being initiated from my accounts, large sums moving in rapid succession. I watched in real time as $570,000, nearly to the dollar, was systematically withdrawn from my accounts. The transfers were being executed through my banking website, using my own login credentials. Someone had accessed my username and password. The digital trail was not difficult to follow. The IP address matched my parents' home computer. They had somehow obtained my banking credentials and were draining my accounts without my knowledge or consent. I left work immediately and drove straight to their house, a dangerous combination of fury and disbelief propelling me forward. When I arrived, both of my parents' cars were in the driveway. I did not bother knocking. They were sitting at the kitchen table, papers spread before them, looking startled by my sudden entrance. Neither spoke as I placed my phone on the table, showing the transfer notifications. "Explain this," I said, my voice eerily calm despite the rage churning inside me. "My father recovered first. We did what we had to do for Ryan. You left us no choice." How, Jez? You stole over $500,000 from me. That is not doing what you had to do. That is a felony." My mother began to cry, but her tears no longer moved me. Ryan's life was in danger, Kent. What were we supposed to do? Let them hurt him? You were supposed to respect my decision and work with me on a reasonable solution. Not hack into my accounts and steal my money. We did not hack anything, my father said defensively. Ryan remembered seeing your password written in your desk drawer when he was at your apartment last month. The violation was even more personal than I had initially realized. Ryan had been snooping through my home office, presumably looking for financial information, even then. Where is Ryan now? I demanded. He does not know about this. My mother insisted quickly. We did not tell him where the money came from. We just told him we found a way to handle it, so you stole from one son to bail out the other. And you do not even have the decency to be honest about it. My father stood up, his face flushed. You have always been able to handle yourself, Kent. Always. Since you were a child, Ryan is different. He needs our protection. And I do not? I asked, the question hanging in the air between us. My mother looked at me with an expression that confirmed everything I had felt my entire life. You have never needed us the way he does. The statement struck me like a physical blow. In their minds, my self-sufficiency had not just made me less deserving of support, it had made me less deserving of love. My independence, born of necessity rather than choice, had become the justification for a lifetime of emotional neglect that had now culminated in outright theft. I left their house without another word, the full weight of what had happened settling over me as I drove home. The family I had always tried to please, despite their constant dismissal, had finally shown me exactly who they were and what they thought of me. They had not just stolen my money, they had confirmed my lifelong suspicion that in their eyes, I was nothing more than a resource to be tapped when convenient. That night was the darkest of my life. I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by the modest possessions that represented years of sacrifice and discipline. Now facing financial ruin, I cycled through emotions, rage, grief, betrayal, and finally, as dawn broke, a strange sense of clarity. Years of family history suddenly made perfect sense. Every instance of favoritism, every dismissal of my achievements, every exploitation of my reliability had been building to this moment. The theft was not an aberration but the logical conclusion of our family dynamic. And in that painful realization, I found an unexpected sense of validation. I had not been paranoid or overly sensitive all these years. I had been right. As morning light filtered through my blinds, I made two decisions. First, I would never allow my family to hurt me this way again. And second, I would find a way to reclaim not just my money, but my power in this relationship. What I did not tell my parents during our confrontation was that their theft had revealed something crucial. I had been right to prepare for this day. The trap I had set months earlier had just been sprung. 6 months before the theft occurred, I had begun to notice concerning patterns in my family interactions. Ryan had suddenly become interested in my career, asking unusually specific questions about my company, salary, and investments. My parents had started making more frequent comments about my comfortable lifestyle despite my careful modesty. During a visit to my apartment, I caught my mother glancing at mail on my desk, quickly looking away when I entered the room. These subtle shifts triggered alarm bells. After a lifetime of being hyper-aware of family dynamics, I had developed a sixth sense for when something was changing. I decided to take precautionary measures, though at the time I told myself I was being paranoid. My first step was consulting Taylor, a cybersecurity specialist at my company. Under the guise of general security concerns, I asked about vulnerabilities in personal financial accounts. The weakest link is usually the human element, Taylor explained. Password theft, social engineering, trusted individuals with access to your personal information. Technical security can only protect you so much if someone close to you wants access. Her words resonated uncomfortably. I asked her to help me conduct a thorough security audit of my digital footprint, framing it as professional development. What I was really doing was creating the first layer of my protection plan. Next, I scheduled an appointment with Marcus, a financial advisor I had worked with occasionally. I want to discuss strategies for protecting assets, I told him. Hypothetically, if someone gained unauthorized access to my accounts, What would be my recourse? Marcus looked concerned. Are you worried about identity theft, Kent? Just exploring all contingencies, I replied casually. He outlined several approaches, from enhanced security protocols to diversification across institutions. Then he mentioned something that caught my attention. Some clients create decoy accounts with modest sums that would appear to be their primary savings to anyone looking casually. Their actual wealth is held elsewhere. That night, I began formulating what I later came to call the contingency. If my suspicions were correct, my family might eventually try to access my finances. I needed to be prepared, not just to protect my assets, but to gather evidence if anything happened. I met with Barbara, an attorney specializing in financial crimes, presenting my concerns as abstract worries rather than specific suspicions. Family financial exploitation is unfortunately common, she told me. Documentation is crucial. Dates, amounts, access logs, anything that establishes unauthorized activity. Armed with professional advice, I implemented a multi-layered plan. First, I created a honeypot account at my primary bank, the institution my family knew I used. I transferred $570,000 into this account, making it appear to be my main savings. In reality, I had already moved my actual assets to new accounts at different financial institutions, some offshore, all with enhanced security protocols and no paper statements. Second, I installed specialized tracking software that would log any access to my financial accounts, recording IP addresses, timestamps, and actions taken. This system would send real-time alerts to my phone and email, creating an unalterable record of any unauthorized activity. Third, I upgraded my home security system, adding a camera in my home office that activated whenever someone entered the room. The footage was stored on a secure cloud server that only I could access. Fourth, I began subtly recording conversations with my family whenever money was discussed. Wisconsin being a one-party consent state for recordings, this was completely legal, as long as I was part of the conversation. Fifth, I created a secure folder containing historical evidence of family financial patterns, screenshots of expensive gifts purchased for Ryan, documentation of their refinanced mortgage, texts and emails demonstrating the double standard I had experienced. Implementing this plan required meticulous attention to detail. I had to make the honeypot account appear genuine while ensuring my real assets were inaccessible. I consulted regularly with Jackson, my closest friend since college and the only person who knew the full extent of my family dynamics. Are you sure this is necessary? Jackson asked during one of our strategy sessions. This seems like a lot of preparation for something that might never happen. I hope I am wrong, I admitted. But if I am right, I need to be ready. The emotional toll of creating this contingency plan was significant. There was something profoundly sad about methodically preparing for betrayal by my own family. Some nights, after spending hours setting up security measures, I would lie awake questioning whether I was being paranoid or unfair. But then memories of lifelong patterns would reassert themselves, and my resolve would strengthen. To ensure my family would take the bait if they ever did try to access my finances, I began dropping subtle hints about my financial success. During a family barbecue, I accidentally mentioned a successful investment. At another gathering, I left my car keys visible, the luxury car dealership logo clearly visible on the keychain, suggesting prosperity despite my modest lifestyle. The most calculated move came when my parents visited my apartment for dinner. I deliberately left a bank statement partially visible under some mail on my desk, showing the balance of the honeypot account. I watched my mother notice it, her eyes lingering for just a second too long before looking away. That moment confirmed my suspicions were not unfounded. Creating a situation where my parents would have access to my home office required careful planning. I invited them over to help me select artwork for my walls, knowing my mother would ask to use the bathroom adjacent to my office. As expected, she excused herself during their visit, spending several minutes longer than necessary in that part of the apartment. The security camera later showed her entering my office, opening desk drawers, and photographing documents with her phone. Among those documents was a small notebook containing what appeared to be passwords, including my banking information. In reality, These were specially created credentials that would access only the honeypot account while triggering my monitoring systems. My actual financial accounts used completely different security protocols, including two-factor authentication tied to a separate phone number unknown to my family. With the trap set, all that remained was to wait. For 3 weeks, I monitored my security alerts, half hoping nothing would happen, half expecting the worst. Each day that passed without incident brought both relief and tension. Had I misread the situation? Was I projecting my childhood trauma onto innocent family concerns? Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, while I was in a work meeting, my phone buzzed with the alert I had been both dreading and anticipating. Someone had logged into my honeypot account from an IP address matching my parents' home computer. The trap had been sprung. Now I would learn exactly what my family was capable of. When the first security alert flashed across my phone screen, I excused myself from the meeting and locked myself in an empty conference room. Heart-pounding, I watched in real time as someone methodically navigated through my decoy account. They viewed balances, examined recent transactions, and finally began initiating transfers. The precision was shocking. Within 20 minutes, they had set up transfers totaling exactly $570,000, moving the money through a series of accounts that I later discovered were newly created under my parents' names. They were not just taking some money for an emergency. They were emptying what they believed to be my entire life savings. My monitoring software captured everything: screenshots of each transaction, IP address logs confirming the access came from my parents' home computer, timestamps documenting the methodical draining of the account. It was, from a purely technical perspective, impressive in its thoroughness. What happened next revealed that the emergency gambling debt story was a complete fabrication. My tracking software, which continued to monitor the destination accounts, showed immediate activity after the transfers completed. Within hours, my parents were searching luxury car websites. By evening, they had browsed vacation packages to Europe. The next day, my mother was researching designer jewelry, while my father looked at golf club memberships. None of these searches indicated a desperate attempt to pay off dangerous loan sharks. Instead, they painted a picture of a calculated theft, followed by an immediate spending spree. 3 days after the theft, Ryan suddenly announced on social media that he was buying a new car, posting photos from a BMW dealership. "Level up. New career. New ride." His caption read, though he had not mentioned any new job to the family. The car he was photographed with cost approximately $85,000. A week later, my parents announced they were taking a much-needed vacation to Italy and Greece. A 3-week tour staying at 4- and 5-star hotels. The estimated cost of this trip, based on the packages they had viewed through my tracking software, exceeded $30,000. Social media became a surreal documentary of my stolen money being spent. My mother posted photos of new diamond earrings. My father checked in at an exclusive golf resort. Ryan shared images of shopping bags from high-end stores. All while I quietly collected and organized evidence. I created a detailed spreadsheet tracking every dollar spent, categorizing expenditures and matching them to my original funds. I compiled screenshots, access logs, and transaction records into a comprehensive timeline. I even recorded the stark contrast between the emergency story they had told me and their actual spending behavior. The emotional experience of watching this unfold was complex. There was rage, certainly, at the brazen theft and subsequent luxury spending. There was hurt that cut deeper than I had anticipated, despite years of emotional preparation for family disappointment. But there was also a strange sense of validation. The family dynamic that I had felt but could never quite prove was now documented in undeniable detail. I allowed the situation to develop fully before making any moves. Each day, more evidence accumulated. My parents grew increasingly careless, perhaps believing they had successfully executed their plan without consequences. They made no attempt to contact me after the initial confrontation, apparently assuming I would eventually accept the loss and resume my role as the reliable but overlooked son. Ryan remained seemingly oblivious to the source of the sudden family prosperity, or at least maintained the pretense of ignorance. He continued posting about his blessed life and amazing family support, never questioning how our financially struggling parents had suddenly manifested hundreds of thousands of dollars. The most telling development came 3 weeks after the theft. My parents announced to extended family that they had purchased an investment property, a vacation condo in Florida. The purchase price, based on property records I later accessed, was $320,000. They explained this sudden acquisition as coming from an inheritance they had recently received. This final act of financial fiction was what prompted me to move forward with the confrontation I had been planning. The brazenness of purchasing real estate with stolen money, creating a public record of their misdeeds, demonstrated a level of entitlement that demanded response. I had initially considered simply revealing that they had stolen from a decoy account, reclaiming my actual money, and cutting contact. But watching the elaborate web of lies they constructed, I realized a more comprehensive reckoning was necessary. Not just for my own closure, but potentially for Ryan's sake as well. He was both beneficiary and victim of our parents' toxic dynamics, trapped in a cycle of dependency and entitlement that would ultimately harm him too. After gathering sufficient evidence, I contacted Barbara, the attorney I had consulted earlier. I presented the full documentation of the theft, the false pretenses, and the subsequent spending. "This is one of the most clear-cut cases of financial exploitation I have seen," she said after reviewing my evidence. "You have multiple options for recourse, from civil suits to criminal charges. What would you recommend?" I asked. "That depends on your desired outcome," she replied. "Do you want punishment, restitution, or simply recognition of what happened?" It was a profound question that forced me to examine my true motivations. Did I want revenge, justice, or something more complex? Acknowledgement of a lifetime of family dysfunction that had culminated in this betrayal? After careful consideration, I decided on a measured approach. I would confront my family with the evidence, demand full restitution, and let their response determine my next steps. This would give them one opportunity to take responsibility before I pursued legal remedies. With my strategy determined and evidence organized, I sent a text message to my parents and Ryan, inviting them to dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. "I would like to clear the air after our recent disagreement," I wrote, deliberately understating the situation. My treat, they accepted quickly, perhaps believing this was my attempt at reconciliation, an indication I was ready to resume my role as the reliable son who eventually forgave all transgressions. Little did they know that the meeting I had arranged would fundamentally alter our family dynamic forever. The trap had been successfully sprung. Now it was time for the consequences to unfold. I chose the restaurant carefully, upscale enough to discourage public outbursts, but with private alcove seating that would allow for a frank conversation. I arrived 30 minutes early to compose myself and review the evidence portfolio I had brought, contained in a simple manila folder that sat inconspicuously beside my water glass. My parents arrived first, looking relaxed and tanned from their recent vacation. My mother wore new jewelry, confirming what my tracking software had shown. A significant portion of my money had funded her expanded collection. My father sported an expensive watch I had never seen before. They greeted me with casual affection, as though the theft and subsequent confrontation had been a minor misunderstanding rather than a fundamental betrayal. Ryan arrived last, driving his new BMW and dressed in designer clothes that still had a fresh, unworn quality. He seemed nervous, his eyes darting between our parents and me as he took his seat. Whether his anxiety stemmed from guilt or simply the unusual family tension was unclear. I began the conversation pleasantly, asking about their vacation and other recent activities. They readily shared stories of Italian villages and Greek islands, either oblivious to or unconcerned by the fact that these experiences had been funded by stolen money. Ryan enthusiastically described his new car, claiming it was purchased with savings and a little help from mom and dad. After appetizers arrived, I gradually steered the conversation toward the matter at hand. "I have been doing some financial reorganization recently," I said casually. "It has been quite educational." My father nodded absently. "Good to stay on top of those things. I have learned a lot about tracking fund movements, digital footprints, that sort of thing," I continued, watching their expressions carefully. My mother shifted uncomfortably, while my father maintained his composure. Ryan, still apparently unaware of the full situation, looked confused. "For instance," I said, Opening the manila folder, I now know exactly what happens when someone accesses a bank account without authorization. I placed the first document on the table. A printout showing the login to my account from my parents' IP address, date and time clearly marked. The atmosphere changed instantly. My father froze mid-bite. My mother's hand trembled slightly as she set down her wine glass. "What is this?" Ryan asked, looking at the document with genuine confusion. "This is a record showing that someone logged into my bank account from our parents' home computer," I explained calmly. "And this," I continued, placing down another document, shows the transfers of $570,000 to newly created accounts under their names. Ryan looked at our parents in disbelief. "You said the money for my car came from your savings." "It did," my father said quickly. "Kent is misunderstanding something." "No misunderstanding," I replied, placing down more evidence. Screenshots of transfers, records of subsequent purchases, and a timeline matching their spending to the stolen funds. "After taking the money under the pretense of paying off Ryan gambling debts, you spent it on vacations, jewelry, cars, and property." "Gambling debts?" Ryan echoed, his confusion deepening. "I do not have gambling debts." The revelation hung in the air. My parents had not only stolen from me but had used Ryan as an unwitting pawn in their scheme, fabricating an emergency to justify their actions. My father's denial strategy shifted quickly. "We were going to pay you back," he insisted. "It was a loan. A loan requires consent," I pointed out. "You stole my identity, accessed my accounts without permission, and transferred money without my knowledge." "We are family," my mother interjected, tears forming. "Family helps each other. Is that what you call this?" "Help?" I asked. "Because from where I am sitting, it looks like theft, fraud, and exploitation." Ryan was staring at our parents with growing horror. "Did you really steal from Kent to buy me a car?" Neither answered directly, which was answer enough. I continued methodically presenting evidence. Their luxury purchases, the property acquisition, the fabricated inheritance story. With each new document, their denials grew weaker and less coherent. Then came the moment I had been building toward. "There is one more thing you should know," I said, pulling out the final document. "The money you took was from a decoy account." Confusion crossed their faces. "I have suspected for some time that something like this might happen. So I created a separate account and made it appear to be my primary savings. My actual assets are held elsewhere, secure and untouched." My father's face flushed with anger. "You set us up? You trapped us?" "I protected myself," I corrected, "and you proved I was right to do so." "So the money was not even real?" my mother asked. "Oh, it was real," I clarified. "It was $570,000 of my hard-earned money that you stole and spent. The trap was not the money itself, but the way I tracked and documented everything you did with it." Ryan, who had been processing this information in stunned silence, suddenly turned to our parents. "You used me," he said, his voice breaking. "Who had been? Ryan, who had been processing this information." In stunned, silently, turned to our parents. "You made up a story about me being in danger to justify stealing from Kent." My father attempted to regain control of the situation. "We were trying to help everyone. Kent has always been selfish with his success." "Selfish?" I repeated. "I offered to help with addiction counseling and a structured repayment plan. You are the ones who rejected reasonable assistance in favor of theft." My mother tried a different approach. "We raised you," she said tearfully. "We gave you everything." "No," I replied firmly. "You gave Ryan everything. You made me fend for myself from childhood. The only thing I ever got from you was the knowledge that I was on my own." Ryan suddenly stood up, visibly shaken. "I need some air," he said, walking toward the restaurant exit. My father rose to follow him, but I stopped him with my next words. "You have 48 hours to return every dollar you took from me, or I will file criminal charges and a civil lawsuit. The documentation has already been prepared." "You would do that to your own parents?" he demanded, incredulous. "You are asking if I would hold the people who stole over $500,000 from me accountable for their actions?" "Yes, I would. We are family," my mother pleaded again. Family does not steal from family, I replied. Family does not manipulate and exploit. You have used that word as a weapon my entire life, invoking family whenever you wanted something from me, while giving nothing in return. My father became increasingly agitated, his voice rising until nearby diners began to stare. After everything we have done for you, this is how you repay us? By threatening and embarrassing us? Everything you have done for me? I repeated, keeping my voice steady. Please, elaborate on that. Was it making me work? While Ryan got allowances? Was it ignoring my achievements while celebrating his mediocrity? Was it making me pay for college while funding his? Or perhaps it was stealing my life savings. Which of these things should inspire my loyalty? His face reddened further, and for a moment I thought he might become physically aggressive. Instead, he grabbed my mother's arm. We are leaving. Kent has clearly made his choice. As they stood to leave, I remained seated, maintaining my composure. 48 hours, I reminded them. Then, I go to the authorities. After they stormed out, I sat alone for several minutes, processing what had just occurred. The confrontation had gone largely as I had anticipated, though Ryan's reaction had surprised me. I had expected him to side with our parents as he always had. Instead, he had seemed genuinely shocked by their deception. I paid the bill and walked to the parking lot, where I found Ryan sitting on a bench, staring blankly ahead. Did you know? He asked as I approached. That they made up the gambling story? Not until I saw their spending patterns, I replied honestly. I knew they favored me, he admitted. I always knew that. But I never thought they would do something like this. For the first time in our adult lives, we had a genuinely honest conversation. Ryan confessed that he had always felt trapped by our parents' expectations and assistance, never developing the independence I had been forced to cultivate. They helped me so much that I never learned to help myself, he said. Do you actually have gambling problems? I asked. He shook his head. I play poker with friends sometimes. Small stakes. Nothing serious. As we talked, I realized that Ryan had been as much a victim of our parents' toxic dynamics as I had, just in a different way. Where I had been neglected, he had been smothered. Where I had been forced into premature self-sufficiency, he had been kept in perpetual dependency. What will you do now? He asked. Get my money back, if possible, I replied. After that, I need to reevaluate my relationship with them. And with me? He asked, vulnerability evident in his voice. I considered this carefully. That depends on you. We have never really known each other as adults, without our parents' influence. He nodded thoughtfully. I would like to try. To have a relationship as brothers, not as competitors in some weird game they created. As we parted ways that night, I felt a mixture of emotions. Vindication about my parents, cautious optimism about Ryan, and a profound sense that regardless of what happened next, the old family dynamic had been permanently altered. The confrontation had accomplished what years of trying to earn approval never could. It had forced recognition of the truth. Whether my parents would acknowledge that truth remained to be seen, but I had finally spoken it aloud, backed by irrefutable evidence. And, in doing so, I had reclaimed not just my money, but my narrative. The 48 hours following our confrontation passed in tense silence. I had no contact with my parents, though Ryan texted me several times, processing his own revelations about our family dynamic. Then, exactly 47 hours after my ultimatum, my phone rang with my father's number. The money will be returned, he said without preamble. We have liquidated what we could and taken out loans for the rest. All of it? I asked. Yes, he replied tersely. We are sending wire transfers now. You should check your accounts. I thanked him politely and ended the call. Within an hour, transfers began appearing in my account. By the end of the day, $568,423 had been returned. The missing amount, approximately $1,600, represented wire transfer fees and other expenses that I decided were not worth pursuing. My parents returned the money not out of remorse but out of fear of legal consequences. This was evident in the short note my mother emailed afterward, which contained justifications rather than apologies. We hope someday you will understand that everything we did was out of love for this family. Parents sometimes make difficult choices that children cannot understand until they have children of their own. Their inability to acknowledge wrongdoing confirmed that my decision to create distance was the right one. I responded with a brief, factual email acknowledging receipt of the funds and nothing more. The most unexpected development came from Ryan. 3 days after the restaurant confrontation, he asked to meet at a local coffee shop. He arrived looking different somehow, less polished but more authentic, wearing casual clothes instead of his usual designer outfit. "I sold the BMW," he announced as he sat down. "Got a used Toyota instead. The difference is going into a savings account." This simple act of financial responsibility was more meaningful coming from Ryan than it would have been from anyone else. It represented a first step toward independence. "I have been thinking a lot about what happened," he continued. "About how Mom and Dad treated us differently our whole lives. I never realized how unfair it was to you, because I was benefiting from it." "You were a child," I reminded him. "Neither of us created that dynamic, but I participated in it as an adult," he admitted. "I took their money, their help, without questioning where it came from or what it meant." Our conversation evolved into a profound discussion about family patterns and how they had shaped us both. Ryan had struggled with persistent feelings of inadequacy despite the constant praise and support, never developing the confidence that comes from genuine achievement. I had developed self-reliance, but struggled with emotional connections, always waiting for betrayal. Over the following weeks, our relationship transformed. For the first time, we related as equals, rather than as the golden child and the afterthought. I helped him create his first budget and savings plan. He helped me recognize when my independence became isolation. The most significant decision I made with the returned money was to allocate $95,000 to truly help Ryan, but in ways our parents never had. I paid for him to attend a comprehensive 12-week program that addressed not addiction, since he did not actually have a gambling problem, but the psychological patterns that had kept him dependent and prevented him from developing confidence in his own capabilities. I also connected him with a financial counselor who specialized in teaching fundamental money management skills to adults who had never learned them. And when Ryan expressed interest in completing a certification program in web development, something he had genuine aptitude for, I covered the tuition with the condition that he maintain part-time employment throughout. "Why are you helping me after everything that happened?" he asked once. "Because supporting someone to become stronger and more independent is different from enabling dependence," I explained. "And because breaking toxic family patterns starts with someone doing things differently." My relationship with our parents evolved as well, though not in the way they might have hoped. After returning the money, they made repeated attempts to re-establish the old dynamic. There were guilt-inducing phone calls, manipulative holiday invitations, and attempts to use extended family as intermediaries. I responded by establishing clear, firm boundaries. I would engage in limited, structured contact, but only with explicit acknowledgement of past behavior and respect for my current boundaries. When they tested these limits, as they inevitably did, I responded with consistent consequences, temporarily suspending contact until the boundaries were respected again. It was not punishment, but protection, both for myself and for the possibility of eventually developing a healthier relationship. Whether that healthier relationship would ever materialize remained uncertain, but I was no longer willing to sacrifice my well-being for the illusion of family harmony. My personal healing journey involved weekly sessions with a therapist specializing in family trauma. Through this work, I came to understand that the hypervigilance and extreme self-reliance I had developed were adaptive responses to childhood emotional neglect. These traits had served me well in some ways but limited me in others, particularly in forming close relationships. The challenge now, my therapist explained, is to maintain the strength you developed while allowing yourself the vulnerability necessary for genuine connection. This insight guided my approach to friendship and eventually dating. I began to identify people who demonstrated consistency and reciprocity, gradually building a chosen family of individuals who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. I learned to celebrate my achievements without seeking external validation and to ask for support without fearing it would be used against me. 1 year after the confrontation at the restaurant, much had changed. Ryan had completed his certification program and secured entry-level employment at a web development company. He lived in a modest apartment within his means and had begun building his own savings. We met regularly for dinner, our conversations increasingly free from the shadow of our childhood roles. My parents continued their pattern of attempted control, though with diminishing intensity as they recognized the immovability of my boundaries. They never fully acknowledged the extent of their actions or the lifetime of favoritism that preceded the theft. But they did learn that access to my life was contingent upon respect for my terms. A significant shift in a relationship where terms had always been dictated to me rather than by me. The most profound change, however, was internal. I no longer felt compelled to earn love through achievement or accommodation. I recognized that genuine relationships are built on mutual respect and care, not obligation or manipulation. I learned that forgiveness does not require forgetting or continuing to expose yourself to harm, and perhaps most importantly, I discovered that family is defined by behavior, not biology. The financial trap I had set revealed far more than my parents' willingness to steal from me. It exposed the fundamental dynamics that had shaped our family for decades, and in that exposure came the opportunity to finally break free, not just from financial exploitation, but from the emotional patterns that had confined us all. If you have ever felt undervalued by the people who should value you most, know that you are not alone. Your worth is not determined by how others treat you, but by the strength and integrity with which you navigate life's challenges. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who took you for granted? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they deserve respect, even from family. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the greatest act of self-love is simply recognizing when enough is enough.